The fire in the barn had taken her husband, but it had not taken her fear. That stayed with Chelsea McMillan like a shadow she could never outrun. Folks in Redemption Valley liked to say the creek sang sweet, but Chelsea knew better. Sweet sounds didn't mean safe waters. She had learned that the hard way the day she was married off at 16 to Kel Goodwin, a banker's son with polished boots and a rotted soul. The town had called her lucky. They hadn't seen what happened behind their closed doors. But now, standing at the edge of her south pasture with dust swirling around her boots and a herd of restless cattle in front of her, Chelsea felt something she hadn't felt in years: control. She had rebuilt the Double M Ranch on her own. She had turned away suitors who only wanted her land. And she had told herself she would never again trust any man who tried to speak into her life. Until she noticed Dalton Hancock. It happened on an early summer morning while she checked the herd. She saw him working with the dairy cow everyone else hated. Old Bessie had sent 3 different ranch hands limping off in pain, yet Dalton stood beside her as calm as morning fog. His voice was steady and soft, a quiet drawl shaped by years of honest labor. "Easy there, girl. No one's rushing you." Chelsea watched the way his hands moved, how patient he was with a creature that scared grown men. She felt something inside her shift, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since long before the flames had taken Kel. She had always noticed Dalton on the ranch, but only the way a boss noticed an employee. Now she saw him in a different light, steady, gentle, careful. The kind of man who could calm storms instead of starting them. "Morning, Mrs. Goodwin," Dalton said when he finally saw her. "Bessie gave near a gallon today." She nodded, but her voice caught in her throat. That hadn't happened in years. As the summer day stretched on, she found herself crossing paths with him more often. He cooked meals in the bunkhouse that smelled better than anything she remembered from her marriage. He tended a garden behind the bunkhouse filled with herbs and vegetables growing in neat rows. Every plant looked strong and cared for. It reminded her of the garden her mother once kept, the one Chelsea had let die because looking at it hurt too much. She surprised herself the first time she asked, "Could I see your garden?" Dalton hesitated like he wasn't sure if she was serious. "Yes, ma'am."
"Of course."
And when she walked behind him, following the row of herbs he had built with his own hands, Chelsea felt something loosen inside her chest, something warm and unfamiliar. They began talking more, about cattle, about old memories, about nothing at all. And every time he spoke, she felt her guard soften by an inch. It made her uneasy. She had sworn she would never mistake kindness for love again. But Dalton never asked her to change. He never corrected her. He never lifted his voice. He never looked at her with the cold judgment that had once crushed her spirit. He simply talked to her like she mattered. One late afternoon, while the sun hung low behind the hills, she found him repairing an old fence down by the creek. Dalton's shirt was damp with sweat, his hands rough from work, but his expression calm as he tightened the last wire. "Doesn't feel right to leave something broken when I can fix it," he said. Chelsea sat on a boulder nearby, watching him work. "Is that why you became a ranch hand?" she asked. "Partly. But truth is, I needed a place to heal for a while." "Heal from what?" Dalton set his tools down, wiping his brow as he leaned on the fence.
"I was engaged once."
"Thought she loved me. Turned out she wanted things I couldn't give. Fancy things. Things money buys." Chelsea felt jealousy prick her heart, sharp and unexpected. What happened? She found a man who could give her those things. I wasn't enough. Not enough. Chelsea knew that sting too well. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Dalton shook his head. "Hurt me at the time. But it taught me something. Better to be alone than with someone who sees you as less than you are." Chelsea stared at him, struck by how closely his story echoed her own. They shared a long silence, broken only by the creek whispering through the stones. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone in her pain. She felt understood, seen, and that scared her more than anything. The change between them became something the ranch hands noticed. Even she noticed it, especially the day she lifted a feed sack heavier than she expected. She stumbled, and Dalton's hand caught her elbow. "Easy now." he murmured, steadying her. Their eyes met. Close. Too close. His hand warm on her arm, her breath uneven. "Maybe I should stick to lighter work," she whispered. "Maybe you should let someone help you more often," he replied. Neither moved. Not a word passed between them, yet everything did. That night, walking back to the ranch house, Chelsea felt warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in years. A dangerous warmth, a hopeful warmth. She told herself it meant nothing, but deep down she knew something was beginning, something she was not ready to name. Chelsea woke the next morning telling herself she would keep her distance. It was safer that way. Dalton was a good man, a steady man, the kind who carried quiet strength instead of loud promises. But Chelsea had been fooled before. Sweet words and gentle gestures had once hidden a cruel heart. She would not let history repeat itself. But distance was hard when the man you wanted to avoid kept showing up exactly where you needed him. She found him in the barn sorting feed, in the bunkhouse kitchen carving meat, in the fields checking fences. And every time he saw her, he tipped his hat with that soft, warm expression that made her feel seen in a way she had forgotten was possible. She tried to ignore the feeling growing inside her, but feelings had a way of refusing to be ignored. One afternoon, while she and Dalton were reviewing the herd counts, the sound of boots crunching on gravel made them both turn. Dr. Rocky Ferguson stood at the barn entrance, his eyes cold and judgmental. "Chelsea," he said with a false polite smile, "I need a moment, alone." Chelsea folded her arms. "I'm discussing ranch business with Mr. Hancock. Whatever you have to say can be said here." Ferguson's smile thinned. "Very well. I've heard troubling rumors. People are saying your companionship with a hired hand is becoming improper." Dalton stepped back, like he was used to being pushed aside. Chelsea saw the look in his eyes, the same look she once wore when someone made her feel small. A low anger rose in her chest. "My companionship is no one's business but mine," she said. "Now, Chelsea, you know how quick a woman's reputation can sour. You are a widow of standing. He is a decent man," Chelsea snapped, "something you might try being one day." Dalton's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Ferguson, however, lost his patience entirely. "You're risking everything, your place, your name, by letting a cowboy linger so close." Dalton finally spoke, his voice low.
I think the lady asked you to leave.
Ferguson turned on him with spite. "And I think you should remember your place." Dalton didn't flinch. Bolton didn't flinch. "Men like me work for what we have. We don't expect anything handed to us." Chelsea stepped forward, her voice like ice. "And men like him don't judge others with half the poison you do." "Goodbye, doctor." Ferguson's face reddened, but he left. The barn grew quiet again, dust swirling in the sunbeams. Chelsea turned to Dalton.
I'm sorry you had to hear that.
Dalton shook his head. "I'm not sorry. I just don't want my presence to make your life harder." Her heart kicked painfully. "Do you care?" Dalton met her eyes with an honesty that felt like a hand on her heart. "I care that it might hurt you, but I don't care what anyone thinks about me being near you." Chelsea had no reply, not one she trusted herself to say aloud. But things changed after that. They stopped pretending there was nothing between them. He stayed close when she needed him. She sought his company without telling herself why. Their conversations grew softer, deeper, more personal, and slowly, the ranch itself began to feel different, warmer, lighter, alive for the first time since her parents had died. Then Zane Banks arrived, pompous, smug, and carrying a marriage proposal as if he were offering her a business contract instead of his heart. "Chelsea, darling," he said, sweeping into her kitchen without permission. "I believe it's time we discussed our future." Dalton stood beside her, quiet but solid as a stone wall. "Mr. Banks," Chelsea said coolly, "I don't recall inviting you in." Banks ignored her. "I am prepared to offer complete financial support, social respectability, and modernization of your ranch. In return, you will provide land access for my growing leather business." Dalton's expression didn't change, but Chelsea felt him tense beside her. And if I decline? She asked. Banks leaned back smugly. Don't be foolish. The alternative is social ruin. This little affection you have for your cowboy is already causing talk. You need a respectable husband. I am your last decent option. Chelsea felt something inside her snap. My last decent option, she repeated softly. She stepped closer, her voice steady. Mr. Banks, the decent men of this valley treat their families with kindness. They work hard. They honor their word. You don't know the meaning of decent. Banks' face reddened. You're making a mistake that will ruin you. No, she said, moving to stand beside Dalton. My mistake was forgetting that I deserve better than men who think I'm something to buy. Banks' eyes flicked between them, hateful. Men like him don't stay, Chelsea. Men like him take what they want and move on. Dalton finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. I'm standing right here, sir, and you don't speak for me. Banks stormed out, slamming the door so hard the jars on the shelf rattled. Silence filled the kitchen. Chelsea exhaled slowly, leaning against the counter. That was exhausting. Dalton stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough she could feel his warmth.
You handled him just fine.
Did I? You made your choice clear. Chelsea looked up at him, her pulse quickening. And what choice was that? Dalton hesitated, then spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. The choice to keep me in your life. Chelsea didn't deny it. She couldn't. Their next test came quietly. It wasn't born of conflict. It was born of truth. Late one night, as the lantern glowed soft in her kitchen, Dalton set down his tools and looked at her with an expression she had never seen before. Uncertain, hopeful, afraid. Chelsea, I think I'm falling for you. The world felt like it stopped. Dalton searched her face. If you tell me to walk away, I will. I won't trouble you. But I had to say it. Chelsea's heart raced painfully. She was scared. More scared than she had been facing fire, insults, or loneliness. Because this time, the danger wasn't outside her. It was inside her chest. Dalton waited. Chelsea stepped closer, then closer still. Dalton, she whispered. I'm scared too. His breath caught. Of me? No. Of how much I don't want to lose you. His hand hovered near her arm, unsure if he could touch her. May I? Chelsea nodded. His hand slid to her waist, gentle, careful, steady. She felt her breath leave her body. Something inside her walls cracked wide open. And in that quiet, trembling moment, for the first time since she was 16, Chelsea let herself feel something real, something warm, something alive. Chelsea had never known a touch that felt safe, not from a man, not since her father. But the night Dalton's hand settled gently at her waist, she felt something she had forgotten she could feel. Peace. A quiet peace that wrapped around her ribs like warm light. She let herself rest in that moment. In him. And Dalton, for all his strength and roughened hands, held her like he was afraid she might break if he breathed too hard. We don't have to rush anything, he murmured. I'll move at your pace. She didn't know men like him existed. Men who didn't demand. Men who didn't push. Men who waited. The warmth of his patience was more dangerous than anything else, because it made her want him more. In the days that followed, they didn't speak of what happened, but everything changed. Their routines tangled gently together. They shared early mornings walking the pastures, evenings talking on the porch while the last streaks of sunlight glowed on the valley, quiet smiles across the barn, small touches that lingered longer each time. One evening, as they were repairing the ranch's old water pump, Dalton looked at her with a steadiness that made her heart thud. Chelsea, he said slowly, I want to build something with you, something that lasts. Her breath caught. Are you asking me something? Dalton set his tools aside and faced her fully. If I'm just helping you get through another season, we patch this pump. But if I'm planning to be here for years, If I'm planning a future with you, then we invest in real repairs." Her heartbeat echoed like hoofbeats in her chest. "And what do you want?" she whispered. "I want the long term, with you. If you'll have me." The world tilted. She wasn't expecting a proposal. Not here. Not kneeling in dirt and tools and broken iron. But maybe this was exactly where love should happen, real and unpolished, like them. She stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "Yes, Dalton Hancock, I'll have you." The wedding was simple. A crisp October morning. A small circle of people who mattered. She wore her mother's favorite shade of blue. He wore his best shirt. Instead of fancy vows, they spoke from the heart. Dalton promised to love her because of her strength, not despite it. Chelsea promised to trust him with her heart and her future. Their kiss was soft but sure, the kind that quietly says forever. That night, in the quiet warmth of their new life, Dalton held her gently, like a man who knew the weight of her past and wanted to lift every piece of it off her shoulders. "Chelsea," he whispered against her neck, breathless with wonder, "you never told me you were this tight." She laughed softly, her face flushed with a joy she never thought she'd feel. "There are a lot of things you don't know about me yet, and I look forward to learning all of them," he murmured. For the first time in her life, she felt cherished rather than possessed, loved rather than controlled, seen rather than judged. The days turned into months, months into years. The Double M Ranch grew under both their hands, his practical skill and her sharp business sense creating something people in Redemption Valley couldn't ignore. Even critics who once whispered now nodded with respect when the couple rode into town. Love and work blended together in a way that made everything feel lighter. Laughter returned to the ranch house. Children's footsteps echoed in rooms that once held silence. Lily Rose came first, a daughter with Chelsea's eyes and Dalton's calm spirit. Thomas came later, a steady boy with gentle hands who followed his father everywhere. Then little Rose, wild and sweet, who believed her father was stronger than the mountains. Watching Dalton with their children made something inside Chelsea bloom even deeper. He hummed lullabies, taught the kids to plant seeds, lifted them onto horses, told bedtime stories in a voice that made every shadow feel safe.
Chelsea,
He said one night as he rocked their youngest to sleep.
I never imagined a life this good.
Neither had she. Years passed, and Chelsea found herself standing on the porch of the Double M Ranch one golden afternoon, watching their 3 children chase chickens around the yard, their laughter rising in the warm air. Dalton approached, carrying vegetables from his garden. Dirt on his hands, sun in his smile, her husband, her partner. "Our kids are going to wear those chickens out," he chuckled. She laughed softly. "They wear me out." They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the bright chaos of their family, the ranch, their life. Dalton looked at her with quiet pride. Dalton looked at her with quiet pride. No regrets? Chelsea thought about the girl she once was, scared, hurt, hidden behind walls she'd built to survive. Then she looked at the woman she had become, strong, loved, home. Not one. Dalton kissed her forehead, his voice soft. "You bloomed, Chelsea. You really bloomed." She leaned into him, the valley stretching wide before them, mountains watching over their land like old friends. No creek had ever sung so sweetly to her, because she had finally learned the truth. Love wasn't something you waited for. It was something you built every day with the right man beside you.